Well, welcome back, everybody. This is the next edition, I guess you would say, to Spilling the Tea in Studio D. Before we get to our guest, I'd like to welcome Candace back from her ear reduction surgery she had last week when we were out. So glad to see you back.
I knew you were going to call me out on that.
Can you hear better now, or did it help?
Listen, I can hear great.
Okay.
You're going to make me talk about it, aren't you?
Yeah, eventually we will.
I gave him a hard time. I said, "You're going to miss me." I was like, because I had my appointment got switched, and then I said, and then you're going to bring up my appointment, and I'm like, that's okay. I'll use it as a public service announcement or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm 48, and I go to the doctor for my checkup, whatever, and she's like, well, they've lowered the age for colonoscopy screening to 45, and so and my uncle did have colon cancer, and so they said, well, we're going to send you. So my appointment was actually in December, and then they called and said, we got an opening, we're going to switch it. So he had to do the podcast by himself. And I said, you're going to bring up my colonoscopy on the podcast. And he was like, no.
And I didn't.
Just said, yeah, you did. You did.
No.
But anyway, really, public service announcement for everybody. It is not that bad at all. And it's definitely worth it to make sure that, everything's good. And I know several people that are young, 2 people that in my life that, females under age 45, actually under age 46 that have been diagnosed with colon cancer. So if you haven't been screened and you're at age 45, then you need to go do that. So
okay, yeah.
There you go. Thanks
for that. And more importantly, I bet you didn't know we'd be talking about colonoscopies, did you?
That's a great subject.
Yeah, and then I gave him a hard time this morning because I said, you dress like me for the podcast. We show up like twins. Khaki pants.
I would say great minds think alike, but I don't think that's the case with either one of us. So, well, we're very pleased to have with us this episode Mr. Vernard Henley and Vanessa, Shelburne. Did I get it right? Last week I murdered the guest's name all kinds of ways, but he was okay with it because I mistakenly called him a country music artist, so he was really good with that. So, well, let's just get started by giving us a little bit of background, and we try to, pull education into this and how you're connected to education and how that got started for you. So, Vernard, if you will.
How I got started in education?
Sure. And what led you to the position you're in right now?
Oh, well, gosh, I don't know if you've got that much time, but I'll try to be quick. Between my brother and myself, both of us are engineers, but we didn't know we were doing engineering as kids.
Right.
And so we kind of fell into it. And so I developed this weird passion that if somebody as crazy as I am can fall into engineering, then other kids could probably be identified as, competent engineers. And so this long journey of engineering began when I started with Exxon and did outreach, and I got hooked. And so right now I'm retired, but I'm still connected to the Ouachita Mountains Regional Science and Engineering Fair, where Vanessa is basically the puppet master. And so the fair itself is an opportunity for kids to find themselves, to find their passion in STEM. And so a science fair is more than, and I'm probably talking too much, so you have to stop me. You're not going to stop me.
Carry on.
Kind of like a wayward son.
Yeah.
Okay, so the science and the engineering fair is not designed for kids to just be hung up on flask and making concoctions. It's really more how you apply the science, math, engineering, technology, and solve problems. So we're here to urge people, kids, and teachers to identify those students who not necessarily are making all A's in science and math, but those students that have come up with new ideas to do. For example, there was a young man that used math to analyze baseball players. And we thought that was a great project.
Sure.
And he advanced to the International Science and Engineering Fair from our fair. So
Oh,
we're
wow.
looking for those
Yeah,
types
that's
of
awesome.
students.
So, chemical engineer or
Civil.
civil? Okay. All right. My son's mechanical. Daughter-in-law is industrial. So,
Okay.
I kind of get that a little bit. And get this, former chair of the Arkansas STEM Coalition. Believe that or not. So,
Hey, let's just
yeah.
let's
so,
just say that his
yeah.
son, he got it from his mom
Yeah,
with
but-
the
but
engineering
I
brain.
mean,
Wow.
I have that, just like you, obviously, I'm nowhere near math or any of those things, but big believer in STEM because exactly what you said. There are kids out there that have incredible ideas, as you say, and I think, given, the push, they have that realization you don't have to be an engineer or whatever, and I think through the years we've missed some of those kids.
Right.
So,
Mhm. Well, and I give Darren a hard time, but he's like Mr. Fix It. So he really is kind of mechanically inclined because if it's something that, I mean, I couldn't do a lot of this stuff.
well, I don't mind messing stuff up,
Well, you can always fix it.
Well,
That's
that's
right,
true.
exactly.
But yeah, he's pretty good at it.
Well, Vanessa, what about you? How'd you get to where you're at?
Well, my mother was an educator.
Mhm.
Therefore, I said, I really don't think that's what I want to do because I've
Right.
seen you haul all these papers home every night and grade all these things by hand. And I think I'd really like to go into science,
Right.
get a biology degree. And she said, well, that may be, that's fine, but you're getting an education degree along with it. So I did, and fast forward many, many, many years, it was not really in my life plan to be an educator. So I really have not been teaching it as long as a lot of people. I didn't start till I was about 40 years old. And I honestly, I was poised to go back and get my RN degree.
Oh, wow.
And I had done a little substituting at my son's middle school where he attended. And one day the principal called me in the summer and said, hey, Miss Shelburne, this was like in the 99, 2000. You know anything about computers? I'm like, well, we have one. And anyway, so I ended up teaching 7th grade computer science for a year, and then I know what he did. He redshirted me in a way
Right.
because he swapped me and the science teacher, and I was delighted. She wasn't delighted, but she's the best computer science teacher of all time.
Wow.
Wow.
does it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't have a real long background in education, but I've loved every minute of it.
That's really neat.
Well, the other thing about the STEM process to me is that failing forward piece where you encourage kids and some kids roll out of there. I hate to use the word fragile, but sometimes they are a little fragile as far as willing to take that risk and so how do you go about encouraging those kinds of kids that and my kid was a lot like that. I'm probably way on the other end of the spectrum where it does not bother me at all to go out and try something, and I've told him time after time I've fallen down. So
I guess I have to rely on what happened to me. We all have talents, and this is where teachers come in and push students towards what you're good at. And so I had a good math teacher, and he kept pushing. But as a kid growing up, you think, well, what am I going to do with math? I'm going to be a math teacher. Nothing personal. But, that's all you see.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can only be what
Yeah.
you see.
Right.
And so my brother and I would visit our grandparents in North Carolina, and he would drive a go-kart. And I would ride a mini bike. And I don't think Vanessa's heard this story. So we would race, and it's about 5 years between us. And I would try to pass, and our grandfather took this lot and made a track out of it.
oh wow, yeah.
And so I would get up on a bank and try to pass him. And I'd put dirt up, but I noticed that the dirt kept sliding down. And it didn't matter how high I put the dirt, it would slide down to a certain point. And so, this would go on summer after summer. So when I finally decided to go to college and major in civil engineering, there was a class that talked about angle of repose. Now, I know you're glazing over now,
Yeah.
but that's actually a scientific term, and the lights just came on, and that's when I knew that this was the major, because I'd
Right.
been doing this. I'd been doing this every summer, trying to figure out how do you make dirt get higher.
Yeah.
And it depends on the type of dirt and
Right.
and all and the grain size and all
Yeah.
the rest of that. But that's when I knew I was in the right major. And so what teachers need to do is identify those things that kids come in and say, yeah, I was doing this summer, and I noticed that if I put certain lubricants on this trailer hitch, for example, things were a lot easier. But that's the beginning of chemical engineering.
Right.
That's the beginning of that. So what I guess I was fortunate that all of the pieces fit together. But for other kids, they probably go, man, that's a weird thing that happened. But that's really what happened. You know, as boys, we play with Hot Wheels and we figure out the bank, the angle that keeps the car on. But that's math.
Right.
But all this time, no one ever explained to me what you could do with this,
Right.
you know, innate curiosity that you have. So,
Right.
So really, that's what we hope educators will do is get beyond the books and then listen to what the students are saying and their experiences, and then try to connect them to the pathway towards, I like that, I really like that. And even to this day, I still, you know, I like highways, I like, and they're, you know, I studied transportation in school, so those are the things that really I think kids can connect to if you just listen to them for every night.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you know, that's important to you know, your willingness to share, because you never know how great or not the story is. You may hit a kid like you're saying that may. Yeah, I mean, the light bulb may go on and say, "Hey, hadn't thought about it that way," but that's something that does interest me.
Well, Bethany and I, we presented to fifth graders at Bauxite yesterday, and we had the conversation. We were talking just a presentation about how to be a better human, but we talked about our differences and that everybody in the world is different. We're here for a reason, to make the world function, because, you know, we have to eat and we have to get places, and so we're not all meant to be the same. So you know, going back to what you said about finding their reason, their purpose, what they love, and get them on that path. I think that's great.
So, are both of y'all native Arkansans?
I am.
Are you?
I am not. I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, wow. Okay, I got you.
Okay, we won't hold that against
Yeah.
you. I'm just kidding.
So, where'd you go to college? I mean,
I'm afraid to say on this podcast.
no, you're fine. Yeah.
University of Tennessee. Go
All right.
Nobles.
Hey, that's a great place to be this
Hey,
past
hey.
weekend.
Yeah, right
Just
now.
beat
Yeah,
Bama,
no,
yeah.
exactly. Hey, we're with you. Anytime Bama gets
Yeah.
beat, man, we're right there with you.
We're like-
It might not be a good time to mention that I just moved back here from Alabama after
Uh.
taking 12 years in Alabama.
Well, hey, you know, but you're a native Arkansan, so you're good to go.
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
So, you know, let's talk a little bit about the science fair you guys spoke about. How long has it been going on? Any idea?
I don't know how long I don't know, because I'm relatively new to this particular one.
Has it been 6 years?
You mean here?
Yeah, the one you guys
Oh,
are.
6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. How did it get started? Any idea? Were y'all part of that movement?
Yeah. So, why am I doing all the talking?
Because you were actually here when it started, and I came in like a year or so later.
Okay, so
a couple of years.
So in Arkansas, as in the rest of the U.S., there are regions that host these science fairs, and
Right.
there was a region of Arkansas that did not have a science fair, and so one of the perks of the fair is two students or two projects and their teachers go to wherever the international fair is held.
Oh, wow.
And it's done for an entire week. Now that sounds boring, but really, when you step back and say, here's your opportunity to tour Los Angeles
Wow.
and see
Yeah.
everything there is to see, educational and otherwise, and see the ocean and all those other things,
Right.
or Phoenix, or Portland, Oregon, or, you know, because it's held in different cities in the U.S., and
Right.
then meet
Right.
other kids who are like you, think about STEM, but like to have fun, and, you know, make those connections and not feel alone, because a lot of times those kids feel alone.
Sure.
So we got started to basically have the opportunity for kids in this area, the 16 county region, to have this experience more than anything else. And of course, that's the big carrot. The other
Right.
carrot is you get to go to the state science fair at UCA.
Oh, wow.
And compete, and again have another opportunity to advance to the international fair. But we will take 2 projects, and they're sponsoring teachers to wherever the fair is held in that particular year. So that's really why it got started, and we just had different people who were interested in the concept.
Right.
And I had been the fair director in New Orleans when I worked there, and I realized that it's a great opportunity, and you just to go, you're a winner.
Right.
Just to experience that. So you're not going just to, I want to win. No, it's just to experience, you know,
Right.
different Nobel Prize winners, students, listen to lectures. They have a college fair. So all of that's there for an entire week, and you get to enjoy yourself and have a good time.
Well, you know, the thing that, I mean, that sounds like an incredible opportunity, because, again, I'm sure a lot of those kids that are there, just getting, you know, to the state level is something they've probably never experienced. And,
Right.
and that's really what I've found through the years, and Candace can back me up on that, is the one thing these kids need, just encouragement.
Right.
You know, they've never heard that, hey, man, you can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the encouragement and the exposure to other,
Right,
Right.
yeah.
other students.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, through the years, has this thing gotten bigger, or you feel like?
Not at the rate we would like.
Right, right.
You know, it's tough because people hear science fair and go, oh man, I got to
Right.
bring my whole class. No, you don't have to bring your whole
Right.
class. We're
Yeah.
just looking for 1 to 2 students per class. That's it.
Right.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the entire volleyball team. It doesn't
Right.
have to be the entire, just those students that have some interest in solving problems, because that's,
Right.
you know, it's not just science, it's science, technology, engineering, math,
Right.
and the application of it. So
Right.
if you have those students, this is their opportunity. And we don't have, like the largest fair in the state is the Central Arkansas Fair, that has, you know, 400 kids.
Right.
We don't have 400. We don't even have 100. So there's a good chance that your student will advance, and you as a teacher get a week-long trip.
Right.
This year it'll be in Dallas.
Wow.
So
Hey.
Well, you know, one of the other things that I've noticed with my time on the coalition there was the emphasis with young ladies in STEM. I mean, again, that's something I never thought of until I was there, but they really focused, you know, on, you know, getting about 8th grade, getting young ladies involved in STEM. And, you know, I've experienced it on a personal level with my daughter-in-law. They're in Northwest Arkansas, and by being associated with STEM, got to do some things that I hadn't experienced. But, you know, we took a trip up to Northwest Arkansas, and I was kind of really astounded at the number of open engineering spots up there. But, I mean, they were fighting for female engineers, female STEM folks up there. And so, I think that's an untapped area.
Right.
So, but, you know, it really and truly, it's for all of them, young men and young women. And, you know, what they're finding out, it's you know, like you said, it's not all about just, you know, some nerd with tape on his glasses doing math. I mean, there's a lot of fun things going on out there. So,
I mean, so one of the examples I like to use, I'm sorry.
Just go, carry on.
Okay.
I have things happening up here.
Yeah.
I have something I want to say.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll get off the stage here in a minute.
Good.
So one of the examples I like to use is when kids, I use it for guys more than anything else, no offense. So when you're watching football, the pylon cam, for example, that's science. That's the technology. Here you are watching this. The other thing that they use are different metrics. And so when you watch a field goal kicker and they pop up, this would have been good from 61 yards. That's
Right.
math.
Right.
Right.
But we're sitting here watching it, but not realizing
Right.
that's somebody's job to calculate that, and it's already been programmed. So,
Right.
but
Right.
again, what do you do with this? And so,
Right.
you know, you just have to get people to recognize the same thing when you watch tennis and you
Yeah.
see where the ball is in
Yeah.
bound or out of bounds.
Right.
So it's there. We're just not pushing kids to make them see
Yeah.
that that's really a job and somebody's getting
Oh,
paid
yeah.
a lot of money
Right.
Absolutely.
just to regurgitate. Yes, that's 61 yards. No, that went at 55 miles per hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
It also occurred, you mentioned a particular stereotype. The overlap between the science and engineering fair, there's a big overlap with STEM and CTE, particularly in this case in agriculture.
Right.
So FFA has a fair as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, why could, those things that they apply there,
Right.
get here.
Sure.
There's the soybean challenge,
Oh, wow.
which is an extra prize in the
Okay.
fair, and it has modules that they complete. That's plant science, which is part of the very first agriculture course,
Right.
and also a standalone course,
Right.
plant science. So a lot of this is it allows students to, if in the right mindset, solve problems that they may encounter every day.
Sure.
There may be something that, in my part of the state, it's really heavy agriculture, different types of agriculture. Just something on the farm that
Right.
it's a problem that we're having. Seems, it may be major, it may be minor. It's just thinking in terms of what's relevant to them on an everyday basis.
Right.
And the nature of the new science standards and the new way that science and STEM is taught now is about investigation, and it provides equity.
Right.
And you would be surprised how students that may not always shine academically,
Right.
when given a chance to solve a problem and to use investigation and use their hands and their brains, will be just, they'll just flourish
Right.
under those circumstances. And the same thing is with the science fair. It does not, science and engineering fair. It does not have to be some big elaborate something. It does not have to be expensive or fancy or involve a lot of equipment. It's more about thinking. A student could take 2 existing data sets. There's all kinds of data available, and look for patterns in those 2 and correlations and things that no one else has ever thought of. And that doesn't require anything except brain power.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And to your point about, the agricultural piece, I think what a gift. Now, there's a lot of, I guess, bad sides to social media, but social media has opened up, in my opinion, a whole new world of exposure. And young ladies to agriculture is one of them. I mean, you see them on those big tractors out there, and it's you've got to know what you're doing, like you're saying, in order to figure out some of the problems they're dealing with. Heck, some of those tractors now, it's like you got to have a degree in calculus to know what you're doing. But I think 15, 20 years ago, it was unheard of for young women to be out there, alongside the men, in those tractors doing those types of things. So now that's the thing that's pretty cool about STEM. I really love the fact that the emphasis that has been on young ladies and women, and they're kicking those doors down saying, hey, we can do this too. So, to
Right.
me, that's been really pretty cool to kind of watch.
Yep.
So, I guess too, with that the fair going on, do you see? You said you're part of the state, so do you see certain things coming from certain parts of the state? If that makes sense to you, do you see some parts of the state, are they more inclined to do? I know you said agriculture, But do you see in other parts of the state, do you see something else that maybe there's an emphasis on?
Well, it really depends on what part of the state you're in. So if let's take Little Rock for example.
Sure.
You have a research hospital, and so here's a resource for kids.
Right.
But to Vanessa's point, you don't need that.
Right.
Because the students will be judged on the content of their project.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that somebody is working with a professor or some medical research project, and it sounds intimidating, but if you have figured out the optimum time to do crop dusting based on a cycle,
Right.
that's a project.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a legitimate project.
Right.
Right.
And that's in your backyard. So certain parts of the state naturally are heavy on the agriculture. Certain parts of the state are heavy on just biomedical and medical research, just because those are the, and I'm probably going to get shot for saying this, that's an easy resource to go to.
Right.
You know, but a lot of that work for those types of students has been already done.
Right.
So it becomes then, how do you present? And
Right.
so those kids are,
Gotcha.
are viewed differently by the judges than a kid in, say, let's pick a rural area that is using existing data to find this is the optimum time. And I can save money because I know that the bugs or the pests are really rampant at this period of time, and we don't have to go and crop dust for a week. We can crop dust for 3 days.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
a money saver, and that's solving a problem.
Right.
So it's not, you know, and when I go to the international fair, naturally you see things that are unique to that area of country,
Right.
or what students are interested in. So,
Right.
but again, it's really up to the student to find those things, and the teacher to push Johnny and Mary in that direction to you know, do the things that interest them.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that you guys are encouraging the teachers to say, hey, figure out, you know, look at your kids, and not just, because, I mean, I taught for 15 years, and you do that, but sometimes you get in there and you get you've got to get these standards taught, and you got to get this. But I think that's a good reminder to them to really look at this kid and see what their potential could be. And not necessarily, it may not be your straight A kid. It may be a kid that loves a certain interest. So
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, and you mentioned CTE and how the connection, you know, Henderson, they have an aviation program, right?
Yes.
And we had a young man in here one day, and we were talking to him, and so we were asking him, you know, we're both thinking pilot, right? And he said, well, yeah, but he said, more importantly, he said, I've got it narrowed down to, like, you know, maybe working in agriculture, like, you know, tree plant kind of thing, and or the game and fish, you know, helping them study wildlife. And I would have never thought that.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, kind of, I mean, you guys have basically explained, you know, that kid, because he said school wouldn't for me at that point until I realized this.
Right.
And he was able to make that connection. So
Yep.
that, I mean, to me, the more you can offer or put out in front of a kid, the better the chances of that kid being successful. And you know, in education, success is such a buzzword, but I think more than ever, we've got to put feet to the word success and open as many doors for those kids that we can.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, like I said, we talk about this a lot, but you know, relationships. I mean, that's exactly you know, the thing that it comes down to. And so let's just go down this road. So I know you've had a teacher inspire you somewhere along the way. Who was that for each of you?
Oh, for me, it was a gentleman that held my attention, not because of how he taught, it was what he wore. And I couldn't go to sleep because it was like a comedy show.
Right.
So Mr. Parker in my high school
Right.
and this is back in the 70s, he had a thick white belt,
Oh
wore
my goodness.
plaid pants.
Did it have those holes in it, those grommets?
No,
Oh,
it was
well.
just a raggedy white belt.
Oh, okay.
And he wore plaid bell bottoms.
Oh my.
And he had a tie that didn't, the pattern went everywhere, and a striped shirt. None of these things went together.
Was the
This
tie
is-
about that wide?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was about as wide as his shirt was. And he had a big walrus mustache, and his shoes were worn down to the side.
Oh my.
And it was just like watching comedy, but I never made anything
Right.
less than an A in his class. And I
Right.
did algebra 2 and trig and everything.
Right.
And, he pushed me into math
Yeah.
competitions. So that
Yeah.
was the person for me, but I paid attention because he laughed at his own jokes.
Right.
And he just held my attention because,
Right.
man, who puts this together?
Right.
Because
Right.
you wear the same combination, but
Yeah.
none of it matches. It's
Right.
just stuff that's wrong. So, I guess to teachers, sometimes that can help too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's that initial
Yeah.
thing that draws you in.
It
Yeah.
drew
Yeah.
me in.
Right.
I
That's
could do
awesome.
math
Right.
like that. So
So mine had nothing to do with science or anything like that, but I had just the stinkiest middle school years
Right.
of all time. I mean, 5th through 8th were just
Yeah.
wretched.
Brutal, huh?
They were
Yeah.
wretched. And not much has changed here, but I was just really awkward. Didn't have any self-confidence. It was miserable. So in 8th grade, a new coach moved to the community. I played basketball. At least I tried. I didn't get much of a chance.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You haven't heard about me?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Can you
Any-
dunk?
anyway, can I dunk?
Yeah.
No. Anyway, so this coach moved in to the community and was new to the community, didn't know anybody, had no preconceived notions about anyone's ability
Right.
or any expectations other than what he was observing coming in new to that community. And I got a chance to excel at what I loved. He encouraged me, and things just turned around for me in 8th grade because of what you mentioned earlier, relationships,
Right.
and taking an interest in students, and those kids on the fringe, the fringes that just are having a hard time,
Right.
That's right.
and basically it turned my high school years around.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Right.
Just
so awesome.
just the way it is,
Yeah, and when you go into teaching and coaching, again, it was career too for me. So I was a little bit older, like you were, Vanessa, when I got into the career, and to me that really defined how I went into it. Because I was a little bit more serious about it.
Right.
But in the back of my mind, it was just that. I remember, I found myself seeking those kids out.
Yeah.
Same.
Because I went to a small school. Everybody knew everybody.
Yep.
But there were still some of those kids, as you say, on the fringe. And, even as a student, I tried to go talk to those kids or what have you. But as an adult, I think it meant more to those kids because they hadn't got that attention
Right.
yet. So, but yeah, and I'm sure you can probably say the same thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot. Just have a heart for like you said, the kids that are kind of on the fringe. And I always say, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, I feel like that's true. And adults are the same way. I feel like you build those relationships and you believe in them. And,
Yep.
if they don't have anybody at home to believe in them, if they have a teacher that believes in them, then they can go far.
Well, and I think that's why, science fairs and things of that nature are so important because of the kids that don't have that athletic ability, or they think they don't have this or that. But if they can have some success in what you guys are, bringing to the table, that may be the one thing that encourages them to go on. And I'm sure you guys have seen that a time or two, probably.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what's some of the most memorable projects or whatever you call those that you've seen at the science
Oh,
fair?
that's a good question.
I know which one I want you to talk about.
Oh, So
I want you to tell about the fans on the computer thing.
oh, the one that made music.
Yes.
So he you just told it.
Yeah, but
No, I said the fans, and you said
Yeah.
the rest
yeah.
of it.
She didn't give details.
I
Yeah.
didn't.
So, really?
Okay, go ahead.
So a young man from this area,
Mm-hmm.
his project, you know, when your computer makes sounds,
Right.
and he heard those sounds, and so he basically had all of them sit together and had programmed it where if you press a button, we will play a song with these what are the CD-ROM turning, and it was amazing. It was amazing use of technology.
Because they all had different pitch.
Wow.
And you could hear the song. You could
Right.
actually hear it. And I mean, he didn't have a whole jukebox.
Sure. Right.
I'm just telling my age now. But the concept alone, those
Yeah.
are the types of students that,
Right.
wow, who would have, because we
Right.
all hear it.
Right.
We all
Sure.
hear zzz.
Yeah.
But he recognized, man, this one is a different pitch. This one is, and
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
pretty
that's
awesome.
one that we had, and I mentioned the one about the baseball. The other one that was kind of interesting was what was it? The bullet penetration, and again, yeah, it's a ballistics test, and not to make this political, but we all have shot a firearm somewhere.
Right.
Whether
Sure.
we want it to or not, or
Right.
just goofing around.
Right.
But you also wonder from time to time, oh, what would slow down a bullet?
Right.
What type of
Absolutely.
material?
Yeah.
So again, that's not in somebody's research lab somewhere.
Right.
That's some kid goofing off and goes, I wonder what this would do if this material were whatever.
Right.
So those are cool things. At the international fair, there was a gentleman from Minnesota, and he played hockey. And his project, he told me he was goofing around at the recycling place, and this was when CDs were popular. And he wondered what would happen if you pressed all the CDs together. What type of material would that be? How strong would it be? So
Yeah.
he convinced his boss at the recycling center to let him collect a bunch of CDs
Wow.
and basically compress them. And it, he learned how to test it, and it looks just like granite. It looks just like granite.
Wow.
He had.
Oh,
So
wow.
again, just sitting, he said
Yeah,
he was just
just
sitting around wondering. And again, you have these students. Everyone has those students that you go, initially your response is, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But
Yeah.
then you start thinking about it like,
Yeah.
that might have potential.
I mean, just think
Yeah.
about all the awesome inventions we get to take advantage of and use every
Yeah.
day because somebody wondered,
Right.
hey,
What happens? if
well,
we do
yeah,
this?
I love it.
Yeah, and that's so important, I think, is to encourage those kinds of stories. I mean, nothing's off the table, really. I mean, if you can think it, let's test it. Is how I look at it, So,
Yeah.
worst thing you could do is fail and learn from it, right? So, again, let's we'll wind down here just a little bit. But what piece of advice would you give young folks out there that are kind of on the fence about trying this or that? I wouldn't call it an experiment, but I don't know, problem to solve. If they're thinking, maybe, maybe not, what advice would you give them?
So hopefully there is an adult in their life that they, that they can go to.
Right.
If they're thinking of science fair, entering a science fair project, we can help, with the ideas. We can help with ideas for resources. We have had offers from college faculty to get their students to participate as
Wow.
mentors
Good.
for students
yeah.
in particular areas.
That's great information
So,
right there.
So when I found out I was going to do this, I thought, what kind of
There we go.
what kind of questions would teachers ask?
Yeah.
So I made myself a list of questions teachers ask. Then I thought, what kind of questions would students ask?
Right.
And I thought, number one, they would ask, can I work with somebody else?
Right.
Because or
Sure.
some students don't want to work with someone else, but
Right.
most of them are
Sure.
pretty gregarious and they want to work with someone.
Well, what I would say there, most don't want to admit it. I think all kids
Yeah.
would want to work with it. Most of them wouldn't admit it.
Right, and they can work with 1 to 2 other people. They can
Wow.
work, it can be up to
Oh,
3
wow.
people on
Yeah,
it.
that's good.
And can I get help? You know, like hey, I'm going to need some help.
Right.
And so yes, we can work together figuring out how to get somebody help. And I really, like we said earlier, is not there doesn't have to be a large financial outlay.
Right.
It does not, whatever this is that they have in mind does not have to be done necessarily outside of class. They may be able to talk to their teacher
Right.
and do a project or an extension or an enrichment
Right.
within their classroom. There are more and more, we're seeing really young people make a big impact. The little poet,
Oh, wow.
you know, that didn't she, at the inauguration, I can't remember her name.
Yep.
Yep.
The young man who made the garbage gathering apparatus was in high school. when he
Right.
Made that. The young woman in the other country, I can't remember her name, but she's been such an influence on women's education. So really young people are making a big impact these days. And going back to social media, you know, part of the impact's that way. So I would say if you have an idea or you have a desire to do something, go to that person, you know, at your school, have them contact us. We'll work with you, you know, on your ideas.
Oh, wow.
You know, speaking of young people, I mean, kind of a side note, but I saw, read it in one of the papers over the weekend, 10-year-olds doing art. The last piece he sold for $100,000. 10 years old. I was like, man.
Wow.
Hey, my stick people were looking terrible
Yeah,
at 10, you know. so-
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, the thing with science and engineering too is some things that appear so simple are really pretty elegant,
Right.
and they're the launching board for something that's just fantastic.
Sure.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
You know, and a lot of these kids will have a project, and then that will inspire more work on that
Right.
same project. And
Absolutely.
developing more work in that.
Take it a little deeper.
Cool.
All right. Well, this is probably the most important question we're going to ask you today, and it's each one of you have to answer it. Okay. So we want to know what's on your playlist. If we got in your vehicle, you're driving around. So what's on your playlist?
No.
Oh, that's easy for me.
Okay.
Why?
Go ahead.
You listening to gangster rap or what?
Maybe.
Who else gonna hear this?
Ju-
Podcast.
I don't know. It's I don't know. We're
It's
on
out there.
Spotify and some other things.
No, since you said my
Sure.
car,
Yeah.
I generally don't listen to anything in my car. If I'm going to listen to anything, it'll be either David Sanborn's or jazz, some
Right.
saxophone. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
I don't have a playlist, but I'm kind of like that. I listen to a lot of NPR stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, on my phone, I've got the weirdest mashup of
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Like I love the Marvel stuff. They have really made a big effort to put a lot of diversity in their music and their last few things, and from other countries and everything.
Right.
So I've got some really nice.
NPR. I tried that once.
Once.
One.
Oh my gosh, the voices make me go to sleep.
No, I'm telling you, I don't care
Yeah.
what it is. If they're talking about tsetse flies,
Yeah.
I'm listening to it. I don't know.
I
gotta have the music
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, those voices are
Yeah.
so melodic. You're like, you know,
It's dangerous to listen
Yeah.
to NPR in the car.
right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried to be
Yeah.
that sophisticated.
Hey, when I
It's
was
not sophisticated.
when I was in college, the radio, one of my work study jobs was working at the campus radio station. It was public radio, and NPR was the heartbeat of that thing. And man, I guess that's where I first got my biggest disdain for NPR. Listening to hours and hours of that. Once in a while, there'll be something that'll hit my interest. Not very often, but the difference between that public radio and commercial radio, huge.
Yes.
You know. So, but anyway.
Yeah, there's no voice inflection on NPR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're right.
This is
Just try it one more time. Just try it. Just try it on the way home today.
You
Just
might have an accident.
Well, I will say this: the thing that I like,
Is that an alarm?
there is one.
Wake yourself up.
There is one program that they do that is good. It's called like the Little Desk.
Tiny desk concept.
Tiny desk
Tiny
concert.
desk. That's it. Now that part I can get with that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
really
see,
good.
here you are.
He does
Hey,
listen
You better
a little.
make up for it.
So,
Yeah, it's music. It keeps me.
How long have you guys worked together?
5 years?
I guess.
Ish.
Ish. Okay. All right.
That's
Well, we
awesome.
appreciate y'all coming in. Y'all been real
Yes.
fun today.
Yes.
So,
Really?
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
we
You
enjoyed
had.
it.
Yeah. We you know.
You're
so-
not pulling our leg.
no, not at all.
That's really the only
honestly.
thing I like about the podcast. Is,
Yeah.
hey, we get to meet
Yeah.
new people.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
awesome.
And when we first started this, like I said, Candace, she was going to come in with a list of questions, and I said, no, that's not how you get to know folks. You got
that's
to be
the math
able to.
teacher in me.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Planner.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. Yeah,
I'm still not like super comfortable doing this,
Yeah.
but I do love getting to meet people. It's really
yeah,
cool
absolutely.
and know their stories.
So we do greatly appreciate you
Yes.
coming in and spending some time with us. And that's going to do it for this episode. Be sure and hit us next time. Candace is going to bring in some videotape of her procedure, so be sure
Oh,
and
my
tune in
word.
for that.
Not
Yeah,
That is not true.
riveting stuff, I promise. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys, and this will do it for this episode of Spilling the Tea in Studio D.